You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
We waste no time with our next guest as we continue the conversation, reacting to everything happening with the NBA playoffs. So we go out to the progressive guest line right now, and we bring on Sean Deveney, who covers the NBA for Heavy.com and Forbes Sports. Sean, appreciate your time this morning. I hope you're having a great weekend so far, and thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's start, of course, with the Lakers and Anthony Davis, Sean. I mean, needless to say, if Anthony Davis is not Anthony Davis the rest of the series, or he can't even play, do you think the Lakers have any chance to win this series with Phoenix?
It's going to be real tough. I mean, that kind of injury, a groin, is really hard to figure. It can feel okay 1 minute and then feel terrible, 10 minutes later. So it's a tough injury to have at this point in the playoffs. It's something that even if he does come back, he'll probably be dealing with throughout the postseason. So it's going to be something sort of hanging over this team. And when you look at the matchup against Phoenix, he has been the difference maker. Didn't play great in game one, and they lost. Played great in game two, at 34, and then 34 again in game three. They win both of those games. And then we see what happens yesterday, and the Lakers, the Suns are able to pull away. So, huge loss for the Lakers. Is certainly in this series, and then even if the Lakers somehow are able to pull this out, going to be something I think that'll linger with them, even if Davis returns.
Sean, just how good was Chris Paul yesterday? And just when you look at his play, how much does he mean to that Suns team?
Yeah, 2 days off, get a little treatment for that shoulder. That really seemed to make all the difference. He didn't make any of the 3-pointers that he shot. He attempted 3 of them, missed all 3. But, if you look back in game 3, he didn't try any. It was just so easy for the Lakers to sort of sag off of him and not even respect the outside shot, because it was obvious that shoulder was hurting him enough that he wasn't able to even try perimeter shots. But a couple days and like I said, some treatment seemed to get him back right. And obviously Phoenix has no chance without him. He's become such a leader for them, such a young group, inexperienced group, especially on this stage. So to have him out there and being effective again, obviously that made all the difference for Phoenix, because they weren't the same team with him not at 100%.
Sean Deveney with us here, talking all things NBA with him. Sean, when you look at the Clippers, I mean, they were getting roasted, rightfully so, when they were down 0-2, losing the first 2 games at home. What's changed with this team, though? I mean, I don't know if there was anyone that saw them winning 2 straight games in blowout fashion, like which they did on the road against the Mavericks.
Yeah, and the defense is really what was missing, and that was something I think you could probably excuse a little bit in the first game, because they had come off of a situation where they had the week off and they hadn't played meaningful games. They kind of laid down against Houston and Oklahoma City to close the year. That tanking move that drew so much criticism. So they hadn't really played in about 2 weeks. So the slow start was understandable, but for them to come out and lose game 2 and just show no intensity on the defensive end, just get crushed by Luka. They've turned that around here in the 2 games in Dallas. They've showed some toughness, some mental fortitude. That's always the question with the Clippers. So not the way you'd like to get to 2-2 for sure, to have to go and win on the road the way they did. But no question, they've got the momentum now. I think Ty Lue has figured out some matchup things that he likes. And coming back to LA, the Clippers kind of look like what we thought they might look like coming into this playoff.
Sean, do you think the injury to Luka Doncic is more severe than he's letting on?
Yeah, Rick Carlisle addressed that a little bit last night and pointed out that he has a lot of trouble turning his head to the left, especially. He's got sort of I don't know exactly what it is. I don't want to pretend to be a doctor, but it sounds like a pinched nerve or something like that, where he just can't move it naturally. And I think everybody's had something like that at some point in their lives. And it's a pain that just sort of jumps up on you and makes you really tentative. So yeah, there's no question that there's something wrong with him. He's looked terrible from the free throw line too. That's kind of a lingering concern, especially if they come back to LA and have a close game. But 9 for 24 shooting. He was not the same passer, had 6 assists. So he just definitely did not look like the same guy there in game 4.
Sean Deveney with us here on our progressive guest line here on the Jake Asman Show, Sports Map Radio. Sean covers the NBA for Heavy.com and for Forbes Sports, and you can follow him on Twitter at Sean Deveney. Sean, as far as the Knicks-Hawks series, I mean, when it was 1-1 going back to Atlanta, I felt like we were maybe headed for a 7-game series there, and then the Hawks go out there and dominate the Knicks at home in games 3 and game 4. What changed for Atlanta? What have you made of what they were able to do now, taking a 3-1 series lead over New York?
Well, I think that really just kind of sticking with what they've been doing. Even the game they lost was a tight one. Their defense has been really good on Julius Randle. They've made it really, really tough on him. He had a better night yesterday, but a lot of that came after they were already too far down. Shot 7 for 19. He's just been terrible. This is his first postseason experience, and it's been about as rough as can be. Where he's shooting, below 30% through 4 games. For a guy who was just terrific with his mid-range jumper, terrific with his ability to attack the rim and play in the post. The Hawks have really pushed him away from the basket, forced him to shoot over the top, and he's just not making those shots. He's not making them, and they need him to. And you can see that he's pressing and he's trying to do too much, and it's just not coming for him. So this is obviously. But worst case scenario, really, for Tom Thibodeau, that they get to the playoffs and to see Randall play like this, because they've gotten a terrific series out of Derrick Rose. RJ Barrett played better yesterday. So everything was lined up for them to come back and even up this series. They just needed Randall to improve as well, and it just didn't happen.
You look at Randall's future with the Knicks. They could pick up his, third-year option. But if you're the Knicks, would you have a lot of hesitancy on giving that guy now a long-term max extension?
Yeah, I was talking about this with one of my colleagues. Do you look at this season as the 72 games that it was, where he looked so great, and just no question you were going to throw all kinds of money at him, or do you take the 4 games of the playoffs and say, this the guy that we're going to invest, $80-90 million in over 4 years? Are we going to make this guy the sink or swim guy for our roster going forward? It's a tough question, because for 72 games he was terrific, and then do these 4 games really sink what your plans were with him? I think that they've come far enough with him that even though he played so poorly in the playoffs, they're going to stick with him and they're going to invest in him. But certainly it's got to give you some pause. It's got to give you some hesitancy. If you're a Knicks fan, that's got to worry you.
As far as what the Hawks have been able to do, are we watching Trae Young really transform himself into, a player that's not just a star, but one of the better players we're going to see in the league going forward?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that, I think we are seeing it. I think the way he's performing, and just the other stuff too. I mean, he's embraced the villain role, and he's gone into New York and he's been bold and he's delivered on the boldness. That's what you want to see. You really do want to see that kind of leadership, that kind of swagger from your young guy, and he's showing that. And to an extent, I think people are catching on to it. I think the fact that the Knicks have bombed out and Julius Randle has bombed out, I think that's sort of been the dominant story. And so it's possible that he's kind of going to get overlooked, but he's been fantastic. And this is definitely a huge step in his development. And assuming they move on and play Philadelphia, what a challenge that will be. And we'll see if he's able to bring that same brashness to that series and able to pull off some upsets against a Sixers team that'll be heavily favored.
Sean, did Milwaukee's dominance over Miami tell you more about the Bucks and how good they are, or really reveal just how far away the Heat still are from winning a championship?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly take it either way. That this is a different Heat team than we saw last year, and certainly the point has been made that the Heat probably got a little lucky in their path to the finals last year, and that maybe they were wrong to overestimate where they were. But I think you got to credit the Bucks. I mean, they were just relentless. They looked like a different team. They had a different sort of approach that we have not seen from this team in the last 2 years. I think that's why they brought Drew Holiday in, was for him to bring that sort of veteran know-how and that sort of mental toughness. And we really saw it from them. But again, it's one thing to beat up on Miami. They're probably going to get Brooklyn very soon, and that's where I want to see whether they've taken that step, because obviously that's such a huge challenge is slowing down that offensive juggernaut in Brooklyn. But all credit to them. They did what they needed to do against a team that really embarrassed them in the playoffs last year.
No surprise with Brooklyn bouncing back in Game 4 and taking a 3-1 series lead. I think most of us expect them to close it out now in 5 games. So when it's Nets and Bucks in the second round, how do the Bucks match up with the Brooklyn Nets? Are they possibly the biggest threat in the East to stopping the Nets?
Yeah, I mean, they are able to create some matchups that I think that Brooklyn's going to struggle with. And that's something that if you're Mike Budenholzer, who's had taken some criticism, rightfully so, for not sort of creating mismatches and not making those kinds of adjustments. But he's got the opportunity to do that. And they have a pretty good, when you talk about Drew Holiday on James Harden or on Kyrie Irving, when you talk about Giannis taking on Kevin Durant and Chris Middleton, again, either on Kyrie or on James Harden, that's pretty good defensively. Not most teams cannot match up against the Nets the way they can. Brook Lopez might be a real difference maker, because we've seen Brooklyn really struggle. Tristan Thompson has been terrific for the Celtics in that series. Brook Lopez is a better player than Tristan Thompson. So, Brooklyn's going to have its hands full with him. So, I think the loss of Dante DiVincenzo hurts the Bucks. He's going to be out, and he's really been a very, very good contributor for them. So not having him is going to hurt them. But I still think that matchup wise, anybody in the East, you'd probably say the Bucks in individual matchups can match up better against them than anybody else.
Sean, great stuff. Thanks so much for taking some time here on the holidays to join us this morning, talking all things hoops. Appreciate it. Stay well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Actually, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sean Deveney joining us there, NBA editor at Heavy.com, contributor for Forbes Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at Sean Deveney, Deveney. He joined us on our Progressive guest line, where drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. We'll take a quick break, wrap up our first hour. Jake Asman with you for one more hour right here on Sports Map Radio.
The Athletic is delivering